the South African Communist Party will be celebrating its founding centenary this year, with various events planned for July, including an inaugural annual SACP Lecture and the 15th National Congress. But is the SACP still relevant today, and what is the party's role in a constitutional democracy? SACP First Deputy General Secretary Solima Baila joins me now to talk about this. Good evening, sir. Thank you very much for your time and joining us tonight here on In Focus. The road to socialism, how's it going? One would say imperialism in South Africa is more arrogant today than it was even 10 years ago. We see the mass retrenchments in the private sector, jobs bloodbath, one would say, but also in the public sector.
Yeah, of course, good evening and good evening to our viewers. Imperialism and colonialism continues to sabotage our country and the developing countries, and people continue to suffer under their system of capitalism, which focuses on profits before the health of the people or before the well-being of the people. And therefore, it's a system that wholly, ultimately has to go. Therefore, the relevance of socialism cannot be questioned given the barbarity of the capitalist system today. We have seen, for instance, in other countries like in China, as we are joining our twin centenaries between us and the Communist Party of China, the success that they've made under the leadership of the Communist Party over the last, since 1949, when they've been in power. They've transformed that country, which was regarded as one of the most backward country by themselves in terms of their own analysis, to one of the most modern and most transformed country in the world, which last year declared that it has no longer poverty in its country. So they've ended abject poverty, and this is the first country in the world to do so.
There are others today, though, who are talking of not only the fact that the socialist experiment has failed, but they are saying instead the world is moving from socialism now back to capitalism because socialism has collapsed. If you look, for example, at Eastern Europe and the Soviet Union.
Well, yes, I think the collapse of the Soviet Union was a major blow to the world socialist movement, given that the Soviet Union was an anchor country supporting socialist countries and other alternatives against the capitalist system. That has been a major blow in, but nonetheless, that blow didn't bring good things to the people worldwide. On the contrary, it has created more difficulties for the world. We now have unilateralism, for instance, the arrogance of capital today, led by the US government, for instance, and its European NATO allies. They control everything, and they are enforcing their rule on everybody. They don't even have appropriate democracy. They rule by decrees. That is why, for instance, the first thing the US president does after taking oath of office is to sign decrees, not democracy at all. Of course, they can plead that the process of election maybe is the only one that is democratic, but nonetheless, their form of governance and also how today they are articulating themselves in the world discourse, it's quite arrogant. It's imperialist arrogance. And that is why today, in the midst of the pandemic as well, they want vaccines for themselves and allow the rest of the world to die. So it doesn't necessarily mean that the socialism is weak. Socialism hasn't been practiced properly in many other instances. And where it can be practiced properly, it remains an ulterior system than the capitalist system.
Now, if you have a look at your manifestos, I think in the 90s or so, one of the sections was talking of building worker power for democratic change. If you assess the events of the last 10 years or so, would you say that part of your manifesto still remains valid? What did you do right, and what did you not achieve?
Well, of course, it remains relevant even today. I think what we need to debate is the nature of democracy we have in our country, whether it's people's democracy or in fact, we prefer people's democracy. At the moment, we have a combination of people's democracy and a proportional or representative democracy, wherein people elect representatives, and sometimes those representatives are counterparties than to the people. So it's a process, and I think that in the context of when South Africa has appreciated democracy, they can then begin to engage different models of democracy and apply some of those. And particularly, I think at local government level, we've got a space in that area to begin to explore different models of democracy and how it can benefit the people worldwide. I mean, there's been major good practices that we can learn from. Of course, that statement remains important to the extent that we can consolidate democracy and hold those who are elected to political office accountable and those who are elected into government accountable, and use the democratic tool as a central tool to hold everyone else accountable and for government to do the right thing. And I don't think we've reached that level or the maturity of democratic use as a country. But we will get there, no doubt about it. We are getting there. Obviously, at the cost at the moment, because sometimes under this current dispensation, you almost come out as if you are asking for people to postpone being hungry, being sick, and so forth, because everything is just moving so slow. But you can change that if we have a system, a people's-based system. And that is why socialism allows that opportunity for people to take charge of their own destinies.
Yeah. Many are arguing that although your numbers are growing, 300,000 and maybe more now, as far as membership is concerned, the SACP has not been able to demonstrate its own potential strength. For example, you keep threatening to go at it alone at the polls, but you just never do it. Is the ANC too strong an alliance partner for you to break away?
Well, that's an incorrect analysis, and I think it's a short-sighted analysis, because it's only an analysis based on us weakening the alliance or moving on our own to stand for elections, which on its own is not necessarily a problem per se. But the manner in which it comes, it denotes that our major contribution should be ignored. I can tell you that there's no major policy in this country, in the main, those that are being practiced, including those that we are aspiring for, that the Communist Party has not been at the forefront of. For instance, the National Health Insurance, we spearheaded that, including on massive campaigns, the program On the Land. Way back in 2001, we launched, in fact, in 2000, we launched our Maubuyo Umhlaba campaign, which was the campaign for the return of the land to the people. I mean, that campaign, when we launched it, we were seen as people who were disrupting a nice democratic discourse in the country. We launched many other things, for instance, public education campaign, almost 15 years before Fees Must Fall happened. But when all of these things are happening, these campaigns that the Communist Party had led and matured are not actually, people are not recognizing that, and which is quite unfortunate for scholars who can actually trace. I don't know where they do their research, for instance. If they can't see some of these things, we can demonstrate those campaigns ourselves. So that shows that we're punched above our weight in many instances, and we still remain relevant in terms of the social discourse that is taking place in our country. And yet, because we are belonging to a multi-party organization, a multi-class organization, there's a struggle even inside the African National Congress itself, and therefore in society. Sometimes you may even have felt that some of the campaigns and programs that we have highlighted as the Communist Party, if we have had a stronger working class movement, they would have actually forced the government to adopt them much earlier than at the pace that it is taking place now.
Taking off pace, basic income wage, universal basic income wage. That's one that is going at but it's going at a slow pace. I mean, is it showing signs?
Yeah, of course, but too slow. We championed that. In fact, if you know, Reverend Zola Square was our major partner in this particular program. When we championed initially the current form of social wage system in form of a series of grants, it was a major campaign by the Communist Party. Of course, all of these programs, when the ANC implements them as a ruling party, they don't accrue necessarily to the Communist Party. But we remain grateful that our ideas can get implemented and benefit the poor, and that continues to encourage us. But of course, the basic income grant given the conditions of our country now, it's much more urgent for implementation. And we're looking forward in our engagement with the Alliance in our coming economic summit that this will be one of the prioritized areas for immediate implementation.
SACP First Deputy General Secretary Solomon Paila, appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us tonight here on In Focus. We continue